Welcome to the course. This course is all about the Spanish opening of chess. It's also known as the Ruy Lopez, named after the famous grandmaster who used it the most and kind of perfected it and developed most of the theory in the early days of the opening. Now, this is one of the most important openings to know in chess if you aspire to be a strong player, or even just if you're an average cub player that wants to play well and have a decent repertoire, because this opening is probably the most used opening in all of chess, and we'll get into various reasons why. It's still used at the very highest levels by the top players in the world, by the world champions, and there is a ton of theory, and there are dozens and dozens of lines that we can learn that we need to know. In this course, I'm going to go over a few of the most important book lines and the reasons behind and the ideas behind all of the moves and positions, so that if your opponent varies from the opening, which will often happen, especially at the lower levels of chess skill, you can capitalize on that. You can take advantage of that. A lot of beginner players, they get confused about openings because they go, well, what if my opponent doesn't make that move that you're showing me? At the higher levels of chess, when your opponent knows the opening, they're going to make a lot of the best moves. But if your opponent doesn't make the best moves or the book moves, then you should be able to capitalize on that. That means they're creating weaknesses in their position and they're not doing the best thing, the strongest thing. So what you can do is immediately capitalize in some cases and get a huge advantage, but you have to know how to do that. And if you understand the position, if you understand the ideas behind the opening, then you can easily take advantage of that. So this position that you're looking at on your screen, after about 3 moves of the game, is the Spanish opening. And it's just slightly different from the Italian opening. The Italian is if we go back basically by 1 move, and we move this bishop back to a starting position. If instead of going to here and putting this pressure on the knight, if we went to c4, this seems like a relatively minor change, but this changes the entire makeup of the position. You're going into a much more aggressive fighting stance by aiming at f7, and black will also be playing more aggressively. This is also a very, very well-known opening. But in this course, we're not going to look at the Italian. It's something that we'll look at a different time. We're looking at the Spanish, which is much more strategic, and it is geared towards players that want to have a more strategic type of game. We don't want immediate fireworks and a quick checkmate and a huge fight and exchange of material at the beginning, which is kind of what the Italian tends to go into. Each opening has its own personality, and it will result in certain types of positions most of the time. Now, a Spanish opening can be quite aggressive. It depends on what your opponent does. It depends on the variation that they choose and their reaction to you. But in general, the Spanish, the reason it's so popular is that it's very, very solid and it's very, very flexible. So you can use it in many different situations against all different kinds of opponents, and you will have a lot of different options to go into depending on how black chooses to react to your choice of this move here, bishop to b5. Now we're going to look at the very classical book lines first, and the reasons why they developed by the early grandmasters, why they were the ones that are used. They're still used today sometimes. And then of course there have been lots of what we call novelties, where grandmasters have done research and study and introduced new moves in order to surprise their opponents in tournaments and have them hopefully be unprepared for some new idea in the opening. And then of course that idea gets analyzed and is determined by the chess community to be either a sound novelty, a really strong move that can be added to the repertoire of the Spanish, or if it's something that was used as maybe a surprise weapon, but they find some reputation for it and it's not something that you want to necessarily use at the high levels of the game or whatever. But with anything in chess, the key idea is to learn the reasons behind the moves, learn what we can get out of the position, what we want to avoid in terms of what your opponent can do to you in the position. And if you understand the principles, then you can make a lot of your own decisions while you play. And if you just learn, some of the moves and memorize some of the moves, it's not going to help you that much because your opponents can do whatever they want and then all of a sudden, if you go off script, you don't know what to do, and you don't know why those were the best moves in the first place. So we're going to jump right into it. We're going to go through the classical lines, then we're going to go through some more modern lines, and we're going to look at what tends to happen in the Spanish and what you need to do in each given situation. So by the time you guys are done with this course, you're going to be a really, really good player in the Spanish for both white and black, because of course we're going to be looking at both sides, but this course is going to focus primarily on how to play it as white and how you can get a really, really strong position no matter what your opponent does.